Hello, guys. I had said that I wasn't going to be talking about this issue anytime soon on my last video, but I have been receiving comments and responses to that video and my blog, and it has prompted this further discussion on the topic. And why am I talking about racism, stereotypes in this channel that has to do with following Jesus? Am I turning into one of those quote unquote woke Christians? Am I pushing critical race theory or all of those things that are very popular in our culture today? This actually has nothing to do with those things. This is a conversation about how Christians should go about having conversations and how you should be thinking about topics such as race, such as ethnicities, um, stereotypes, all of these things. I submit to you that Christians are to be different than the way the world is going to um, attack this topic. So, and this is not to say that Christians are better or none of that, but instead that the Bible gives Christians a responsibility to be different, and that the way that you might want to handle a certain conversation or protest a certain way, the Bible is going to contradict that that's the right way to do things, and the Holy Spirit will convict you as a Christian that that's the wrong way. You're not following Jesus in that situation. So, for example, um, we're going to be respectful of other people's property. We're going to be respectful even in our anger. We're going to continue to follow what the Bible says, that we're going to be slow to anger, and that we're going to have self control over those desires that are not necessarily going to display the righteousness of Christ. And I submit one more thing to you that might not be um, anywhere near the conversations that I've heard on this topic, and that has to do with being sensitive to other people's experiences regarding their historical past with racism. And I think that since we have become so polarized in the news, in on social media, even in our families, YouTube especially, you will only really hear like you're a Democrat or you're a Republican when you're talking about these issues. If you bring up race, already you are portrayed as a Democrat. And that's kind of sad in my opinion, because in my opinion everyone should be concerned about racism. It shouldn't be just one side or the other. And that, I mean, I think we as American citizens, or from whatever part of the world you are watching, everyone should expect um, uh, their political representatives to fight against racism. And how you go about doing that, like through laws, I guess then that does turn into a political discussion. But what I'm talking about here is taking out the politics from these very real situations that have happened, and also that are still happening today in different ways. that may not be as blatantly obvious as, for example, signs in the past that would be placed in a business saying no dogs, no blacks, no Mexicans, or against Jewish people, and many ethnicities have experienced these historical racism. As I guess it's just this terrible thing that comes from the sin in this world, in people. That's why if we are following Jesus, we are not supposed to hold any racist ideologies, and we are to be sensitive about when racism may be disguised um, under like satire, or all of these fake beliefs that are being pushed, for example, against the Jewish people. That was new to me recently. I've been reading this book, for example. Um, it talks about the conspiracy theories that are very prevalent in our world today against the Jewish people. I didn't know that there were people out there that literally blame everything, every terrible thing that has happened in the world, and they think that the Jewish people are behind it. The sad thing is that it's not only people that are not reading the Bible, but it's preachers that are pushing these racist beliefs onto other people against the Jews. So you have examples like this book. And we have definitely, I think most people have been primarily educated against the racism of African Americans. It was such a visual experience that we could definitely see like racism. You could just see it in the manner that they were treated, the lack of dignity, how they tried to dehumanize black people and justify slavery in that way. Um, you see it in chattel slavery, and you see how people resisted not giving up slavery. People wanted to continue to have slaves, and it divided our country. So we can't just assume that just because we have these laws in place, just because we won, the Civil War, that all of a sudden those sentiments, that ideology just disappeared. I think that these things continue to be passed on from generation to generation. So we definitely should never assume that that's just in the past. And for someone that cannot relate or identify with the experiences of Black people, I think that as a follower of Jesus, you are to be sensitive to their unique sensitivity, their unique like anger, and I feel like it's different when it's you and you read about those things and you feel like that could have been me. Those people think that about me, and that's a little bit how I felt. And I'm not trying to say that I know how other ethnicities feel. What I'm trying to say is that that's how I felt when I started to dive into a little bit into the history of racism against Mexican Americans in this country. And it's sad that it was, it took me a little while to be able to find this information. Um, I don't really have an experience where I have heard this information a lot throughout my life, except in college. Um, and so I think that most people are like me, that they just haven't heard about these things a lot in detail. Maybe their high school teacher just kind of briefly covered it, and that was it. So I want to talk about how um, I don't want to try to come across like if I'm an expert in this subject. I want to just let you know that um, in like a few hours of just doing a little research, just getting started on researching the topic, I came across some things, and I hope that I can say it in an accurate way. Um, Probably not going to say it in a chronological order necessarily, but I just want it to be like a regular person having like a simple conversation with another person, that you're listening to what I came across and how my perspective as identifying as a Mexican American maybe might be a little different than yours if you are not Mexican American. And I feel that you need to be sensitive to how someone may be affected by the information differently than you. And I'm not asking you to see things my way, but I am asking you to instead of just trying to say you're right, you're wrong, I see it this way, you see it that way, I'm asking you to have your own opinion, but to keep within your opinion, to keep it in that little outline that you have. There are some people that see it differently than me, and I have to remember that, and I have to consider that. I feel that the Bible teaches us to be considerate of others and to not just have a worldview that it's all about me, it's all about the way I see things, but that we are to be um, wise about the way we talk about things. We're definitely supposed to love people, and if we're offending people because of our personal opinions, I'm not talking about the gospel, I'm talking about our personal opinions about something. If we're just going to label them as stupid because they disagree with me, I submit to you that that's not what being a Christian, a follower of Jesus is. A follower of Jesus cares about oh, you're offended. Okay, I need to be careful about the way I talk to this person about this. And maybe I don't need to necessarily tell you my opinions. Um, maybe like I said, this person is going to give me something to that I can put under the umbrella of what my personal opinion is on a given subject. And you become um, you have a fuller understanding. And I definitely feel that we're so wrong to just try to make everything black and white, and to try to make everything Republican, Democrat, Trump, Biden. Oh man, I feel like I feel like a lot of us have fallen for that. And so whenever we hear someone bring up something about race, instead of thinking, yeah, racism is a terrible thing, let me make sure that's not happening here. Some of us just say, oh, you guys are being ridiculous. You just want to use this to get this person elected. And so, like, even if you do feel that some people are using racism in order to promote their own agenda, that still shouldn't make you just dismiss the non political issue of racism. Okay, so some of the things that I learned about was that a lot of the racist sentiment against Mexican Americans in this country began during the war between Mexico and the United States, and how they took like a large portion of Mexico territory. And so, with that, Mexicans were allowed to be legal citizens of the new United States territory, the larger territory. And so there are going to be clashes, and some of the clashes were things that I feel like we're still hearing today. That those Mexican people were belittled, were discriminated based off of the language that they spoke. They were characterized as like lazy, among other things. And I feel like that was a conversation that was just, I think, when a few years ago, before Trump was president, I remember people talking about how the people living here need to speak the language. And so, like, I feel that if we are not aware of the history of racism, we can miss it when it's happening today, and we can think that's not racist. That makes total sense. But when you educate yourself on racism, you can start to see, wait a minute, this happened during the time that there were no laws to protect Mexicans and they were discriminated, and that was what they were saying. Maybe today they're saying that, but there are laws that are prohibiting certain racist actions. So we cannot assume that those people that are saying those very similar things wouldn't be doing the exact same things that these people over here. Um, Racism is a heart issue. It happens in the heart. God alone knows the hearts of men, but we can definitely see the actions, right? Whatever is in your heart, it's like you manifest that in your actions. So when someone brings a gun and shoots people in a Jewish synagogue, and then they say that they had all these beliefs that the Jewish people are dangerous or whatever, well, we can see that, whoa, that's racism, because we could see it in the actions. But what happens when there's racism in people's hearts, but you don't see those actions as blatantly obvious? And that's why I feel that you could disagree with me about the Babylon Bee picture and other things, but at the end of the day, you don't know what's in the heart of the people that are um, writing certain articles and making certain pictures. Your interpretation of the picture is very different than the person that made it, and there's no way really for us to know though that person's personal views. We don't know if some of those people are racist. Okay, and at the same time, we don't know if they're not racist, right? But like I said, sometimes we can see certain similarities with other more blatant racist things, and we can kind of discern maybe there are some racist undertones to this, and maybe I'm picking up on something that is very common in certain circles in America, certain views, certain put downs of other ethnicities. It's like certain ethnicities want to raise themselves above other ethnicities. And so laughing at another ethnicity, I think, is one way that you are revealing that you think that your ethnicity is superior because I can laugh at other ethnicities. Um, I feel that Christians should be respectful of other people's ethnicities, of other people's experiences, and always be the ones fighting against um, racism, because our Bible teaches us that that's wrong, that God created everyone in the image of God, that God died for everyone, and that within the church there is no certain type of ethnicity that is greater than another, or any type of job, or anything like that. We are all equal within the church, the body of Christ. So I think Christians that don't want anything to do with racism, you are ignoring a very important part of the Bible. And you can care about racism without being a Democrat if that's what your political preference is. You know, it's not you lose, you have to vote for a Democrat. No, this is, like I said, this is not a political issue. This is not a political conversation that I'm having here with you. So when I saw that picture, I'll admit I do not know the heart of the people that wrote that article. So maybe I can be wrong, but maybe I can be right too. And so the way I formed my opinion, I guess everyone has a bias. Some, maybe a Caucasian person, their bias might be, wait a minute, everybody's blaming white people right now for racism, even when they're not racist themselves. And so you project that onto that picture and say, no, they're not racist. Everyone's blaming everyone for being racist. So maybe that was your bias. Or maybe it was your bias that you're not a racist, so you're not going to interpret that as a racist. A racist, their bias is maybe that Mexicans all look like that, and that's hilarious. My bias, I guess, is that I am Mexican American. I was a immigrant child, so I would prefer people depict the children that are coming into this country illegally as not so different than everyone else, or as the legal citizen that looks exactly like him. You know, I feel like I don't like caricatures that may make a racist person laugh. I was thinking about how there have been different caricatures, and even in cartoons, and even if the purpose is just to laugh, and even if the person is not a racist, still, like, you're touching on some really terrible things. You're touching on, for example, how Black people were caricatured, and like with exaggerated features. Like you see it especially with, like, their lips were drawn really big, their skin color was extra dark. Even like the white people that would play the roles of Black people in comedy, what people laughed at back in those days, they painted their faces really, 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 really black. And this is what I'm saying. It's like an ethnicity uh, is laughing at another ethnicity, and that's not respectful, and that's not equal. So that's how I feel. Also about, I believe if you go online, you'll find the exact names, but like I forget the exact way that they said it. But it has to do with like some Asians that they would caricature them with like super long mustache, um, and instead of justifying it, well, look, I found one that does have that, so it's not bad. Um, I think we should be more sensitive about other people within that ethnicity saying, hey, I find it offensive and I would prefer you didn't do it. And for example, like Black people being um, stereotyped and drawn like with watermelons and just things like that. It's one of those things where it it doesn't feel good when other people are laughing about you and you are not what you're laughing about, you know. So that's how I felt. And for people that were just trying to justify I mean, I understand, and that's why I'm making this video. I want to let you know what other people might be thinking as they find something offensive. Because there's a lot of commenting on immigration, I think, in particular in the Babylon Bee, it seems, among a lot of conservative groups. And I think you have to remember the history as well. And you don't want to repeat those sentiments against Mexican Americans. So there were, I already mentioned, there was like signs on businesses, right, that excluded Mexicans from being seen as equal and being able to use the same facilities or the same, just be in the same place as white people. And even just like there were a lot of mob and lynching and those type of situations where it was unlawful. And there were even some situations in Texas where, like a lady, for example, that had to cross the border in order to, because she has to clean someone's house. People like that, men also, they had to, I think you can look it up if you type, I think it's something like the bath riots. But they were stripped. I think I read that they even had to like shave their hair. I'm not too sure because they were concerned about lice. So everybody was forced to go through that process if they wanted to cross the border, and so they were humiliated. I would argue that was a form of rape because nudity is something that no one could take away from you, right? No one can force that on you. Very similar situation to like Jews, how they were, forced to humiliated that way. So Mexicans went through that as well, and they were bathed with chemicals that at the time they didn't realize were very dangerous, and all of their clothes and shoes went through like this heated drying machine or whatever. It was very interesting how the layout, the way those people described it, was gas chambers. The wording resembled so much of like the Nazis, right? So it's really sad to see those pictures online. It's very belittling, and it associates Mexicans with being dirty, and so even though like eventually those people rioted and eventually when they discovered that it was dangerous, those chemicals, it stopped. But that sentiment, it continues. That idea that Mexicans are dirty. And what I was shocked to find out is that in Orange County, which is like just right around the corner from here, there was this segregation, not just with blacks, but with Mexicans. And I think I read that it wasn't necessarily written out like against black people, black children, that they couldn't go to white schools, but it was like assumed. Mexicans, you go to your own schools. And so someone that had the right, technically, they should be able to go to that nice school, was forced to go to like this little shack with 2 rooms. This Mexican, I think it was a girl. And so the parents ended up going to court to fight against this, to give her rights to be able to go to the school where the white children are at, the better school, educational wise. And it took like months for them to rule in her favor, that the Constitution supports that she has the right to go to that school. The people that were arguing against Mexicans being allowed to come to that Orange County school, they were arguing that Mexicans are dirty and a couple of other things, that they don't speak the language, English, and So it was pretty easy to just bring a Mexican child and to speak English in front of everyone to prove that they were wrong. And so, although like laws begin to prohibit certain racist actions, those ideas and those sentiments continue. And that's what I'm arguing today, that although you might not see the same type of things because it's against the law, those ideas continue to to be prevalent in our life. Racism is a world problem. It's not just an American problem, and it's not just a white problem. Racism happens among, I would argue, all ethnicities. And so that's why I feel, as followers of Christ, we need to be vocal about it and always make sure that we are presenting what the Bible teaches against that, and be sensitive about these experiences that each ethnicity has that may be different, and don't just shut it down because it goes against your personal political views. I think we should validate what is true and educate ourselves on these things. That picture, the Babylon Bee, I mean, that I just shared my personal experience seeing it, what it brought up in me, and I shared it with you, and I hope that you will consider that and you will keep that in mind, that no matter how wrong you think I am about that, you will always remember she feels that way for her own reasons, and I also, like her, we don't know for certain if the people that actually are writing these things are racist or not. So we cannot make that assumption. And I think that's all I wanted to say about this. There's so many more things that you can research on the topic. It's a little hard to find, honestly. I found a couple of websites regarding Mexican American racism. I'll leave them in the comment section, as well as I left the two links that I think the most of the information that I shared here I got from those two links. There might have been other websites as well, but they're on the other video also of the Babylon Bee if you want to check that video out too. I appreciate the people that let me know that they also kind of can see the danger and how it has been used in the past when we caricature other ethnicities. I almost feel like because people have been caricatured in such a obvious way in the past, it's almost like people start to learn how to get away with some things without them being blatantly accused of racism. So I don't like that. That's why I don't like that picture. But I appreciate people that could understand where I was coming from. And also, I also got some responses where people feel like they don't want to put themselves out there and go on Twitter and say that because they don't want to be the one outed and go through those comments that I received. And I'm just gonna be honest, you guys, all of those comments, they really did affect me. It was like I just felt like, am I wrong? Is my sensitivity, my experience, why am I being wrong? And so when I researched like the history, I saw like, wait a minute, there is validity to what I'm saying. I'm getting emotional. Sorry. I want you guys to I want us all to learn to be sensitive and to not attack other people with our words. There's there are studies out there that reveal how like verbal abuse, it causes like physical problems. And I've heard like it's so common these days where people are canceled, and I've heard people that have been canceled say like it really affected them, that they were on their bed for like 3 days just crying. And I feel like yesterday kind of like it just kind of shocked me. I couldn't believe that so many people on Twitter could be so cruel and so casual about enjoying someone being bullied online. I put myself in those situations when I feel that it's worth it. And I'm glad that I did, because it allowed for a conversation to begin. I'm okay with, like, some people want to say that feelings and hurt feelings and crying or whatever are like a negative thing, a weak thing. This is just real, you know? This is we need to be careful in the way we have conversations and be sensitive to people. I think that like I got emotional right now just because it touches other things that I have gone through in my life. You know, just where I felt like, am I wrong? And I'm not, but people want to almost make you think like you're the crazy one. You know, so I encourage you guys, please, let's not just see it as wrong, right? Let's see it as, okay, let me build my understanding. Let me use my biblical worldview to respond to people. If we're not sensitive about these things, that can get in the way of our evangelism also. And if people perceive that Christians are racist, I mean, people are going to be closed to listening to other Christians. So we do need to be careful as Christians. You already have heard the labels out there, you know, like the Trumpsters and all of that. And we as the church, the body of Christ, we need to be vocal and make sure that the world knows we're not racist. Even though some people that identify as Christians, including throughout history, you see Luther, for example, saying these really terrible things about the Jewish people, and even like giving some fuel to the Holocaust, and people still like reprinting that information, those terrible things said about the Jewish people. I mean, this is real. This is reality. We are living in among racists, and let's forget about politics when if it's not time to vote. I mean, let's just learn about the reality of racism, and then when it's time to vote, you know, you can have your views on racism, and then you can vote like based off of policy or whatever, however you decide. But don't just like close your mind about racism just because of your personal political views, either side. Well, thanks for listening, and I appreciate it. See you guys on the next video. Bye.